Here is how to make a basic AI with Unity. Firstly, click on the object that you want the AI to control and create a script. Open the script and type in public transform player to declare the object that you want your AI to chase, and in this case it is the player. Now in the update function, type in transform.look at player.transform. Then type in transform.translate brackets vector 3. Forward times the speed times time delta time. This basically makes the AI look at the player and chase them. Now go back to the editor and drag the player to the player variable and hit play. You can see that the AI is chasing the player regardless of where it is moving. Here is how you make a health bar in Unity. Firstly, get the slider and drag it into the canvas, the handle, and make the background black and the fill area red. Open the enemy script and we declare the enemy health and max health as a float variable. Then set the enemy health to 100 when the game starts. Then declare the slider variable. And then make the health bar value reflects the enemy health by dividing the enemy health by its max health. Then create a function that we can recall when we hit the enemy. Inside the function we subtract 25 from the enemy, and if the enemy health is 0 and then it dies. Then go to the shooting script and on the raycast use the ray to recall the function that we have created whenever the ray hits the enemy. Drag the slider onto there to determine which slider we use and then hit play. It works. This is how you make a good animation with Unity. There are three main components to focus on when it comes to animating in Unity. The first thing to focus on is position. Click on the red button on the right of the preview button to record, and you can move your sword anywhere across the three-dimensional map, and then click on the red button to stop recording, and when you play it goes wherever you animate it to go during the recording session. The second thing to focus on is rotation. You can rotate it anywhere you want to. The last component to focus on is scaling. You can increase and decrease the size of the object wherever you like, and the scaling is not permanent. Also, you can double animate the object by adding an extra key by right-clicking on the animation tab and click on Add New Key, and by clicking on the nodes you get to switch between the first or the second animation. Today we are going to make a melee attack system with Unity. Here I have a scene set up with an NPC and an FPS character. If you want the scene, then you should click on the GitHub link at the description below. Firstly, go to add the melee weapon to the scene. In this case it is a sword. Position the sword. Here we see that from the player's perspective. Attach the sword on the camera and then hit play. The sword looks good on this perspective. You can place it however you want, but this is how I like to place my sword. Now let's create a script to attack the enemy and name it attack script. And then double click on the script to open it. Now type in if brackets input dot get mouse button down bracket 0. Raycast hit raise hit. The raycast hit is the ray that will be used to detect the enemy. Type in if physics.raycast brackets transform position transform forward out raise hit comma, then the range, which in this case I put 5 units. Inside the brackets type in if raise hit dot transform dot tag equals to. If we check enemy object in the editor, the tag is enemies, therefore we put in equals to enemies. Raise hit dot transform dot game object dot set active brackets true. This basically shoots a ray whenever we right click, and if the ray touches the enemy then the enemy dies. I will do another video on health system, but right now we will focus on melee. If we test the game, if we click on the enemy it disappears. To make the aim more accurate we can create a crosshair and put it in the middle of the screen. After we are done with the crosshair let's animate the knife. Click on the knife and then head to the animation tab below. Click on create. We will create two separate scripts. One is the attacking animation. Click on Add Property and then Transform and then the plus button on the right of Rotation. Once we are done with the animation, right-click and then create the animator. Then add the animator onto the object. Now click on the animator to open it and add both of the animations in there. Make sure the idle animation is the default. Connect the two animations together with the arrow. Create the Boolean parameters and name it attack. Then set the conditions to activate the attack animations and deactivate the attack animation. Let's code the animation. Click on the knife and create the new script. In this case, I will be naming it an animation script. Type in public animator melee animation. Then on the update function, type in start coroutine bracket coroutine name. Then type in IEnumerator coroutine name in the IEnumerator function, type in yield return new wait for seconds, then the second that you want to transition from attacking to idle animation. As you can see in the animator, the Boolean parameter is named attack. In the script, type in melee animation dot set bool brackets quotation mark attack comma true. Then copy and paste it to below the timeline and change it to false. Now we go to the editor and then attach the animator to the script and hit play. As we can see, the animation does not work that well. Go back to the animator, click on the idle animation and uncheck the has exit time checkbox. Now if we test it again, the animation works smoother due to it not having to play the entire animation before stopping. Hope you have enjoyed this video. Please subscribe, like, share, and bye. Here is how to create a mini map with Unity. Right-click on the hierarchy and select the raw image. That's going to be the mini map itself. Position it wherever you want the mini map to go. Now on the Asset tab, right-click and select Render Texture. That is the texture that renders the mini map on the raw image. Now create a new camera and drag the camera up and make sure it views the player top-down. Render texture to the target texture of the camera and then drag the render texture to the raw image. The render texture gets the camera view, which then projects it to the mini map itself. Now if we click play, you can see that the mini map follows the player wherever it goes and can warn the player about incoming enemies behind them. Today we will be making a simple inventory system. So firstly, drag out the objects that you are going to collect and place box colliders on each object. You should tag the object as well. You can do that by clicking on the Untagged button on the top left part of the Inspector tab and selecting the tag for each of the objects. After you are done with setting the object that the player is going to collect down on the floor, you should position the weapons from the player's perspective and attach them to the camera. After positioning, then turn off the object. Okay, here is how our inventory system is going to work. When we left-click on the mouse, we will shoot a ray. When the ray hits the object that we have placed just now, it will collect the object. There is an integer variable that keeps track of how many weapons you have. And each weapon has its own integer variables. If the weapon is collected, then it will add an extra number onto the integer variable that keeps track of how many weapons you have. The specific weapon integer will be used to determine what key the player must press to equip the weapon. Now if we open the script, we should declare all the variables of weapons, the number of weapons that the player has collected, and the variable that determines which keys the player presses to use the weapons. Also declare a Boolean variable of whether the player has weapons. Under the transform.tag equals to enemies, check whether the player has collected the weapon yet, and then if clicked on the enemies, then the enemy will disappear. Then copy the transform.tag equal to the enemy and paste it 3 times. After that, change it into the specific tag that has been assigned into each of the weapons. Then we will check if the weapon collected is the first weapon to be collected. If it is the first one, then the object will be equipped once it has been collected. Paste them to each of the if statements of the other weapons. Then inside the brackets of the collected weapons, we will make sure the amount of weapons that has been collected will increment by 1 if the weapon is collected. And then we will determine the value and integer of the specific weapon by equating it to the number of weapons collected plus 1. Then we will make sure to tell the game that we have collected the weapons and we can now attack the enemy. Then we will go under the physics raycast if statement, and in the void update function we type in if bracket input dot get key down brackets the weapon integer dot to string brackets. When the player presses the number that we have assigned from the collection on the keyboard, the weapons will be equipped and other weapons will be unequipped. Paste that 3 times and specify the variables to the respective weapon. Now when we go to the editor, drag the weapons that have been attached to the camera to the script. We see that I pick up the weapon based on chronological order. When I press 1, I equip the sword, and when I press 2, I equip the rapier, and press 3, I equip the axe. When I replay again and I collect the rapier is equipped as the default weapon, and press 2, I get the axe. This is how you create an inventory system.